That's fine. I'll let it build too. I gotta get my notes together. Forgot my FAQ. I don't think I have any viewers yet. It's okay. What? Yeah, the page, yeah. I couldn't remember what number that was.
And more people throw them out.
Really?
Yeah.
CHILOCCO, yeah. Believe that's right. Okay, starting to get some people in here. So everybody knows what's going on. I spoke with the program director today for the Department of Homeland Security, who was in charge of the chemical tests at the Chilocco Indian School, south of Arc City. A lot of people have been concerned about what exactly is going on there, what kind of tests are going to be being done, what kind of dangers there might be. So we asked some questions that I've been fielding from people that I've been speaking to, and got some answers to some of those questions. So we'll just kind of go over some of the questions and answers. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. Try to answer them as we do this Facebook Live. Got about an hour now until the 9 o'clock newscast, so try to get as much done as we can before then. So the goal, I guess, to simplify it, the goal of their test, they say, is to examine how particles penetrate structures in the event of a biological or chemical attack. And so what they're doing is they're simulating one with the use of inert chemicals by releasing them at some of the structures on the Chilocco Indian School campus. So what they're releasing 3 different chemicals. The first one is, it's called titanium dioxide. It's an odorless, white, non-flammable powder. They say it's non-hazardous, non-reactive to anything, does not dissolve in water, so they can clean it up a little bit easier. So they'll emit that powder, study how that penetrates the buildings there. They'll also be using a mixture of urea powder that has a fluorescent additive so that they can trace it. Urea is just the chemical that you find in human and animal urine. So pretty simple there. It's used as a fertilizer a lot of places. The fluorescent thing they're using is a brightener that you can find in toothpaste and laundry. Makes whites appear brighter. Then they're using a third particle here. It's a biological particle. It's called, I'm going to butcher the name here, but it's Bacillus thuringiensis. And it is they're spores from a natural biological organism, a bacteria. You can find it in the soil, you find it in the dirt. That's used for fertilizer in organic farming. So those are the 3 chemicals that they're going to be used. They say they're safe for human and animal contact. I asked them if it had any effects on any insect populations, because one of the questions people were wondering about was whether this was going to affect the bee population down near Arc City. The answer there was absolutely not. They say this is it's an insecticide that's specifically targeted to different groups of insects. And this type that they're using, he said, would not even kill mosquitoes because it's that targeted. So it's targeted, I think he said this variety is targeted for a specific bug that feeds on pecans that pecan farmers use to help get rid of pests. So that's that third thing that they're using, that kind of the pesticide that had the most concern. Some other questions that I had, what are some of the population demographics of Newkirk, Oklahoma? Why were the population demographics included in their report? They said that was a requirement because of the environmental assessment that they had to do. That's the 50-page report we told you is on the DHS website. You can access. There's a link on our website on how to access that. That report details, just all of the things that they looked at, the environmental assessment. And that's just a requirement anytime they do this type of testing, is what they told me. Let's see. I've got some other question and answers. Transcribed the whole interview here. Yeah, so another thing with that environmental assessment they did, they said that was the purpose for including that was ensuring that they're not unfairly targeting a minority population. So they had to include the demographics of Newkirk, Oklahoma, because that's the closest populated area to where they're doing that test. Some folks wanted to know why Kansas wasn't notified, even though it's so close to Chilocco. It's less than a mile. I mean, you can see Chilocco from the Kansas state line. So the reason they say is because they were testing in Oklahoma. They're following the procedures for Oklahoma. And what they're saying is that they've designed the tests so that the aerosols that they're releasing, the chemicals that they're releasing, will stay on the property in Oklahoma and won't go anywhere else. So they said they were careful to design the amount of material so it would only stay at the Chilocco property. That's why they didn't notify folks in Kansas right away when they were doing this test. Will Kansas be notified of future testing in Chilocco? They said, they made notifications to, I guess, congressional representatives in and around the area, notifications to a large number of stakeholders. They said by requirement they had to notify the immediate community, so they did through the local newspaper there in Newkirk. They said future tests would go that same direction. So it's kind of unsure what dispersal that newspaper would have as far as if people in Kansas would be notified. We had a question about would it affect the bald eagle or snow owl populations. The program director says not at all. He says they're working with very low levels of the materials they're working with. They have just enough material that they say they'll be able to conduct the testing and keep them on the side, like I said, and they're not toxic to, they say, a variety of animals. You can find that in that environmental assessment as well. There's some, I remember reading some charts in there that said what animals were affected or not affected by the chemicals that they're using. Someone asked if the family directly north of Chilocco would be affected. They say not at all. It won't have any effect on humans. Someone asked about the increments for the testing and how many, they're doing the testing in 10-minute increments. So they wanted to know how many 10-minute increments those particles would be released. He said there's one 10-minute increment for each test, and that's for each of the 3 particle releases that I went over. The dioxide, I refer to my notes here, titanium dioxide, urea powder, and the Bacillus thuringiensis, the bacteria. So those are the 3 chemicals. They're doing 10-minute increment releases of those chemicals. And that's what they're doing the tests in January through February, and then again later next summer. Someone asked how much contamination will settle in the buildings on the campus. That's a question that they don't know the answer to, because that's what they're trying to determine. So they say that they have estimates of what they think will settle inside the buildings, but they're trying to use the smallest amount of material possible to see what sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was reading some comments. To see what is settling in the building. Excuse me. Lewis added, you don't seem to believe what you are reading. It's a lot to intake in a short amount of time. So it's not that I don't believe it. It's just this is stuff I've learned today, so I'm just trying to understand it and relay it to you to help you understand. This is what they told me, so I'm just relaying that information to you guys, the viewers who are concerned and want to know more about this testing that's going on. Susan, you're asking about the wind. That's actually one of my next things I was gonna. We asked about the wind. Let me find the answer there. Right, so they're doing the tests when the wind's blowing 2 to 12 miles an hour north. They say that, you know, they've designed the test so that the wind will not blow the contaminants or the chemicals away from the Shalako area. They did tell me today that if the wind is not stable before they start the test, it's not in that limit that they've set, then they won't start the test. He also said that if it changes during the test, they would stop the test. If the wind direction changes, they'll have to stop the test because it's not going in the direction that they want it to go. Because they'll be releasing the chemicals south of the buildings that they want it to go in. They need it to drift north into the buildings that they're trying to test. So good question. The question on a lot of people's minds, but the hope is that they, you know, they stand by their word and they won't start the test if the wind is too much or it's going in a different direction. Let's see. Wind changes, contamination. They don't think there's going to be any impact to livestock or prairie grasses on that property. They said the materials that they're working with will only affect insect populations, like I mentioned earlier, and it's only the insects that that pesticide is designed to kill. The guy mentioned on the phone that it won't even kill mosquitoes because it's not designed to kill them. I thought that was an interesting point. Any people in those buildings during tests? No. As part of the conditions during the tests, nobody can be in that area. They're just studying how the chemicals will get into the buildings, not how it will affect people, because it's not supposed to affect people. It's safe for people. They're just studying the movement of particles similar to particles that would be in a chemical or biological weapon. Someone said, what requires public notice? Anytime you're doing something, like if you're using, for example, the biopesticide that they're using, if you're using it and you're not using it for the reason it was created, so you're using it to test a biological weapon theory, you're not using it to spray crops. They have to do an environmental assessment, and part of that environmental assessment means giving public notice of their desire to test this in a method that it's not designed for. Let's see. People asked if there's any way the DHS would move the testing location. Linda asked, if this is so safe, why are they wearing protective clothing? Another good question. That is because OSHA requires them to. Anybody working in conditions that may result in exposure to particulates, because I mean, they are going to be the ones close to the large concentrations of the clouds. That stuff, it's not harmful, but you still don't want to get it in your eyes and breathe it in for obvious reasons. So that's why they wear the masks and the hazmat suits. You know, they said because the guys who are working with it are going to be working with it in the most concentrated form, like, yeah, the most dense clouds, they need to wear that gear. Okay, do they plan on going back periodically to make sure the area is clean? Believe so. That's why they're using the chemicals that are water soluble, so they can go back in and clean that up. They've said in their assessment that they would go in and decontaminate everything. So yeah, I'm sure they'll be going in and cleaning everything up. They said that they put what's called barcodes on the biological particles that they're releasing that allows them to track them, because they have sensors that can track them, so then they can find those particles and clean them up. Sarah, well, how will they be cleaning it up? That is a question I'll have to search for an answer for. I imagine there was something in the environmental assessment on that. I don't remember off the top of my head. I will find that information though here in a second. Let me.
So when we see that quote, that starts expanding. Okay. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so what is where I see where I'm reading for Grandma Candelaria, I see a thousand of pictures of it. Is that the translation, or did you say? Yeah.
Well, don't say, let's just start, let's just.
Okay, so we're going to hear in Spanish, and then we'll hear you say for Grandma.
Right. But I'm saying that matters. Okay.
Just
Oh,
let her keep talking. If you're translating, just let her keep talking. It's not once you start where you can just give
So here's the answer I found in here. Oh boy, more questions. Oh, hey Hannah. All right, so Sarah, yes, how will they be cleaning up? They said they're gonna, because the particles they're releasing are inert, they won't require them to go back and clean them up because they pose no danger to the area around there. Ernie, if they said it's safe, why do they have to test it? Guess what many sort of all the precautions, well, it's not safe. Yeah, Ernie, I mean, yeah, the only way to answer that question is that it's safe. I mean, it's safe that they know right now. I don't know that they foresee any future dangers because of it. Like I said, it's just urea powder, which is found in urine. It's a titanium dioxide, which is inert, and there is a biological particle that's used in organic farming to organically get rid of pests. So if you go to the store, the example he gave me, if you go to the store and you buy an organic apple, chances are this particle was used to keep that apple from being eaten by pests. So it's all stuff that they feel comfortable using and they feel is safe for human and animal contact. Yeah, Susan, I don't know that there's another power that oversees this. I mean, we just talked to the DHS, who is the head of the tests right now. That'd be beyond my abilities, I think, to know if there's some sort of shadow corporation controlling these tests. Sarah, cleaning up with water and urea, and what other particles? So yeah, urea, and it's mixed with a fluorescent brightener that's in toothpaste and laundry detergents. The biological particulate is in a it's a naturally occurring bacteria, sorry. and the other one is the titanium dioxide. It's odorless, not flammable, non-toxic. It's a powder, a white powder. So Yola, if it's safe, why are they testing? Good question. They're not actually testing these three substances. They are using these substances as substitutes for biological or chemical weapons. So the logic behind that being that these powders and these biological spores that they're releasing have similar characteristics to the things that terrorists might use. So then they're seeing how those particles would penetrate homes, so that in the event of a biological attack, they'll know, which homes are vulnerable, which homes are safer, and they can kind of help coordinate first responders on that. Linda, are they definitely going to test there, or are they going to listen to any public input? It seems like they're definitely going to test there. They do want to listen to public input as well. So they're wanting everybody to send comments. I'll give you that email right now, actually, because they do want to hear from you. If I can even find it. Here we go. So if you want to send comments, write down this email. It's biotest@hq.dhs.gov. And that's where you can send your comments. They're listening to public input. They're pretty sure they're going to test there. They actually told me they've done similar tests like this using the same particles in other places that were more highly populated than here, than Park City, than Newkirk. Stay on here for a few more minutes, and I need to get ready for the 9 o'clock. We're going to go over some of this stuff at 9 o'clock tonight on the KSCW, also at 10 o'clock tonight on KWCH News. So you can tune in there. We'll kind of talk a little bit more. You can hear from the program director himself in the newscast from our interview we recorded earlier this afternoon. And if you have any more questions, shoot them out here. Linda, yeah, there's some buildings on the campus of the Chilapa Indian School. It is on the sort of northeast edge of the property. There are some what look like houses from the aerial photos I'm looking at. It's to the west of, there's like a pond or a lake on the property. The north end of that lake, just west of it, there's some buildings there that they're going to be releasing the particles into. So yeah, that's the place. Oh, did you mean the places that they also tested in? Yes, the New York City subway system, Boston, and Washington, D.C. were just three of the examples he gave me. So, comment any more questions you guys have. I'll stay on for a couple more minutes before I got to start getting ready for our newscast. Yeah, just for a couple minutes.
So, are they testing to help prevent a potential chemical attack?
They're testing to coordinate responses to chemical attacks.
So they're testing.
They're testing so that if So if a chemical attack or biological attack were to happen, they would better know how to respond, because they'd better know how those chemicals and particles would,
So to help combat a potential chemical attack.
to help, I guess,
I'm trying to think, what's that word I'm missing?
remediate, to help, I wouldn't say to help respond. Yeah. Because they said that the main reason was to help first responders understand it. Sarah, 3 particles, yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't think, maybe hypothetical. 3 particles, Sarah. There's 2 inert sort of chemical particles, and then there's 1 bacterial spore they're releasing. Jim, they said that it should have no impact on birds or other wildlife. They said it's the chemical that they're using, the bacteria, is the one that has the most concern for people, I think. But it's the one that it's specifically targeted insects. It's an insecticide, and it's like Melanie mentioned. It's specifically designed to kill one specific type of insect. He gave me an example earlier. The program director said that it wouldn't even kill mosquitoes, the one that they're using. It won't affect the bee population. That was another thing of concern. Shouldn't have any effect on livestock or other, species in that area when they conduct those tests. Sarah, thuricide, or did you mean fluoricide? I don't see a thuricide anywhere. Melanie, I don't think cornstarch would have the same dynamics that they're looking for as far as particles and the way they would move through the air and through buildings. I think a lot of it just has to do with the similarity of those particles they chose to the particles that may be found in a biological or chemical weapon. It's probably the closest that they could get to that without actually using a biological or chemical weapon, which we would not want them to do, obviously. All right, I'm going to have to get off of here for now, but you can tune into KSCW at 9. We'll talk a little bit more about this, and then we'll have even more at 10 tonight on KWCH 12. Thank you guys for your questions. Hope I answered them. Feel free to continue commenting on this. If you have more questions, I'll try to get back here and answer some more of those. So, thanks.